Hi, how are you? Welcome back to Impossible Live. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome, welcome. Let us know where you're from. Let us know a way that we can help you in between our lives. And really, thank you so much for creating space to join us live or for a replay. Today's topic is navigating our blind spots. And this one was an interesting one to come up with. And I think it came up for a couple of reasons. One is I've really been enjoying hanging out with mental fitness and positive intelligence people, and I'm going to explore becoming a certified coach next year. And in the process, it's helped me develop a system to kind of interrupt the pattern. And in that way, I'd say sometimes to make me a little more aware of some of the blind spots. When I was a young adult and had migraines, and I occasionally have them, but I felt that blind spots were kind of those spots in our vision that just we couldn't see past. That maybe it was a spot in our vision that it was only visual. That was my misconception when I was younger. I thought they only happened before, during, or after a migraine. And then, as in the process of more life experiences and really determining analysis paralysis was an issue for me, I learned that they were related in more areas than we thought. And the analysis paralysis part came up just in the process of making decisions. And I think that's one of the interesting things in exploring the topic. It reminded me, as we're trying to increase our impact, or we're trying to make better decisions, we're trying to learn more to keep pace with kind of that pace of change that's accelerating in our world. In the process, it really reminded me that it's our unconscious, as decision makers, as experts, tell us about how we make the majority of our decisions. It's our unconscious mind. And in that process, it can create more blind spots. So I'm really grateful for mental fitness and the PQ reps of kind of creating a pattern interrupt. And what they did in the process of me learning about them is they helped me start exploring ways to really navigate the blind spots. So for many of us, it might go to the question, where do our habits or our tunnel vision lead us? And that's really what I'd love to talk with you about today. It's also been coming up in the process of creating a beta course. One of the modules is risks. And in that module, starting to explore in conversations things that are affecting where we go. We talk about it all the time, how we approach intersections, whether we make a right or a left, whether it's a lateral move, whether we pause, whether it seems like we're stepping backwards or not. But in that process, love to talk about maybe several ways other than amazing mental fitness. But another one is try to develop a really curious growth mindset. It'll help our habits and our tunnel vision kind of lead us in a different direction. It keeps us curious. And I really want to thank, as always, Jeffrey Davis for helping me approach wonder and tracking wonder. But that part of mm, processing how we respond to changes and trying to create, I'm falling in love with it now as kind of an alchemist in safe spaces of creating what they call new neural pathways. What are new ways to kind of open up the opportunities to explore the intersection and ways to navigate some of the blind spots and reduce some of the butterflies? And hi, Phil. How are you? Welcome. And thank you so much for joining us. My PQ Godfather is here as I am mentioning mental fitness more and more, but I think about it too because when we're talking about blind spots, some of our vehicles have blind spot monitoring, and they can detect stuff that's kind of coming up in our path. Why don't we work as hard to kind of build our own detection systems for blind spots, whether it's trying to find and work with great coaches or showing up as more curious sometimes when we're asking questions. But when it comes to our habits, I mean, many of us are taught practice makes perfect. And in the process of exploring blind spots and today's topic, I really was reminded that somehow uh, the process of the practice or the trying to make something, to master something or to perfect something, that in some cases it convinces us that wherever we're going, it's right. And it creates kind of a blind spot bias. It was one of the reasons after speaking recently with Louisa about, oh, and oh wow, I think love this, Phil. You think having butterflies is a good thing? We just need to help them fly in formation. I love that. Absolutely love that. I was reminded too about the blind spots when speaking recently with Louisa about are our comfort zones inclusive? Because it really is a reminder of what we let in, and whether we think there's an issue or not, whether we try to spot our blind spots or ask others to help us work on them, or we investigate them. But the interesting part for me was finding that unconscious bias was part of this. And it led me to an article on how to practice new habits to eliminate blind spot bias. And that had five great, it's a wonderful article in Forbes, and it had some really great tips on how to create habits. And I'd love to share maybe one of them with you today. And we mentioned curiosity and the practice of having like a really curious growth mindset. But the other one related back to where I started from as a kid of thinking that blind spots were a vision thing, and just really trying to find some ways to help us reduce our tunnel vision. And thanks, Phil. Better late than ever. You're so right. And I think we talk about that all the time in the process of learning or asking questions. And the blind spots, sometimes they seem like they're in our way. And other times we just need to have the energy or have like a really great wellspring of support to help get past them. Because we don't always have that blind spot monitoring and we don't always have an external system like positive intelligence or mental fitness or meditation or some sort of habit that, oh, I love that. Phil said it was suggested to him to think in terms of practice makes permanent rather than perfect. I love that. And it is an idea of how we show up and what we absorb and then what we reflect. I think also in the process of practicing, we need to approach it not when we're distracted and not when we're overly busy, and we take time, whether it's taking time to listen, taking time to learn, and sometimes without responding and while pausing. And I think that's a good way too to kind of remove some of these blind spots or remove what they're calling blind spot bias, because it really is kind of proven. Yes, Phil. They're, oh my, they're good and bad, eh? Well, they are, because sometimes in the process of them being good, they can open us up to new ways to think, new coaches to follow, new questions to answer, new paths to explore. And At the same time, they really are a reminder, as you said before, that maybe it's about what becomes permanent or lasting rather than what becomes perfect. I think the interesting thing, and I always laugh when Phil's around because it is a reminder of our lens that we're looking at or the perspectives. So maybe just the opportunity to check out new perspectives, whether it's this process now of consciously, and I'm deep in the journey of trying to create new neural pathways. I've been having this conversation with my mom too, who's, as she's aging in place, is starting watching Jeopardy every night and watching the questions and somebody else asking questions on a variety of topics. She's finding is really active at helping to like stimulate and open new doors. I smiled because mom now says I'm about to learn a new game because she realized in the process of her learning new things, it's a reminder to her as a teacher, as a scholar, keep teaching others new things, and it'll help her in the process too. What is one way though, as we're navigating just in general, because the in the perfect world or in the imperfect fragile world that we live in, there's the opportunity to think that we can create that old fashioned Staples easy button. There isn't one that just helps us navigate. I know I'm grateful for amazing coaches and collaborators and different voices and different hanging out with different thought leaders who are just opening up my mind on how to approach something. I think it also really reminds me sometimes that one of the blind spots are language filters. Their language, their words, that can kind of be a trigger. Kind of they take us someplace. They remind me of the unconscious bias or of the bias because we all have stuff that we respond to, whether we're creating relationships or responding to a sponsor or another leader or another team member. And it's a real reminder to keep exploring other perspectives and checking out other resources from sources that we trust, that when we have the space to kind of show up with grace, really well rested, and with the awareness to kind of explore the blind spot. Some of them, they're just hanging out, they're hidden, they're going to be there. And as Phil says, they maybe aren't moving. Maybe we're born with them in some cases, or maybe in some cases they're cultural, or maybe it's part of the expectations. We know we can't see the full 360. And the more we can, the more impact we have, the more success we'll have, the more ease it'll feel like as we're trying to navigate and move around. I do wish we had more blind spot automatic monitoring systems and that they were internal in some way, that there's some sort of equivalent of the Lost in Space robot that said warning, warning, warning. So it let you know it was a danger zone before making a decision. I know one of my blind spots previously, and I'm truly trying to work on this. And thank you for your great feedback on topics and ways to go and explore things in our possible lives. Is I had a topic that I wanted to explore with a delightful guest, smart, intelligent, stimulated conversation. We were able to really get along really well and really easy. And I opened up social media one day and I saw a post that kind of it hit my robot and Lost in Space, so to speak. And I ended up reading the post several times. And I decided not to respond, not a comment, not a like, not a share, not a private message, just to really process it. And in the process, I learned that we on paper had this really amazing vibe. We had this great conversational vibe. We showed up as curious, as explorers, as people who wanted to help each other solve problems. And I realized in this post, it was letting me become more aware of some more of my unconscious bias, some things I felt kind of strongly about, and kind of, felt almost like digging in the sand. And I was like, wow, we're supposed to have a live in a little bit. And I really wanted to reach out and kind of explore it. And I ended up letting the opportunity pass. And I let the opportunity pass because my warning system let me know if we were to have a conversation about this post, it probably wasn't going to go well. And it wasn't the way that I wanted to show up online. It wasn't, it wasn't with the spirit of showing up to help others. I really felt like this post kind of was really triggering me to kind of go back to some stuff that I thought I had kind of really gotten over and really let go. And one of the interesting things about it was the not having the conversation. And I really felt it was important to kind of clear the air. And I learned it was not about us agreeing on the direction we went into. It wasn't about us agreeing on the direction we were coming from or us agreeing how we would approach conversations. It really taught me a lot about the stuff I couldn't see, about the differences in our focus. And that part of the blind spots really, really stuck with me because I'm not saying this was a relationship in which we were going to date. We were going to date, or you know, we're both kind of happily married. I'm grateful for that, but that it would have been a chance to continue exploring with grace. The weirdest part about this blind spot is it taught me a little bit about how to handle conflict. And rather than by feeling that I avoided having a direct conversation on it, it really helped me take a really deep dive with some coaches, with some collaborators. I did some reading, I did some learning, I did some skill building on the process of that. And now I've changed maybe my intake process in terms of speaking with future guests. It changed how also I show up when I'm on someone else's show or their platform. And it's a real reminder to kind of bring our conscious level when we are online and when we're in person and when we're communicating with each other so that we kind of feel not that we're starting from the same place, but we've got the same ground rules or we're on the similar game board, for lack of a better expression, or playing field as we're exploring and trying to help each other build our businesses and solve problems. There's also an interesting, by using the hashtag blind spots, I found some other amazing, amazing resources that we could check out as we're navigating them. But I think this is the reminder blind spots are, as Phil said, there's a good and a bad to them. How we locate them, how we address them, how we become aware of them. And in some cases, really, it's such a reminder to be really gentle when we're helping others become aware of their blind spots, of making sure we ask for permission and we're doing it in a space where there's a lot of privacy because some of them, there's hidden triggers underneath them, whether it's the words that we use or how we show up or how we address each other. So it was a real reminder to me, and it helped me really get deeper even into the feed forward I wasn't up to me to give feedback to somebody else on the language that they use in their own post on a platform that they like to use. It wasn't up to me. So in the process of navigating, I learned to kind of sit still with it, that it is a matter of us stretching to see whether we're trying to dive deeper into a new habit, whether we're going deeper into a tunnel, hopefully with more lights and more support to help us navigate and find out the outside. But the real wild part about the blind spots for me was it was really underneath it. This is something that can really stand in our way of whether we're making decisions that later we feel are good or bad. That was the part that really stuck with me. It's not just how we approach the intersection, and it's not about just finding great lights and tunnels and finding lots of support as we're making these decisions, but when it's that blind spot leading to a blind spot bias and unconscious bias, that may be something that is changing what we invest in, how we invest in, or why we show up and participate. But I would love, as always, to thank you for joining us today, to thank you for showing up, to thank you for spending some of your time with us, whether it's on a replay or whether it's live, but to thank you just for showing up today for Impossible Live. You stay safe, stay well, stay inspired, stay in touch, and please have a magnificent day. Take great care. Be well.